Hi and welcome to Mailbox number 26. 26 means it's halfway through the year. So we've been doing this for 6 months. Let's see how the next 6 months goes. Now, first of all, straight into a comment here. This is based on a discussion we were having last week because someone was suggesting they'd overheard Ian Hazakostas, or a friend of theirs had overheard Ian Hazakostas saying there'd be no more tier in Legion. Cue a number of comments like this. There is nowhere they will not be tier. Oops. Okay, so onto a comment from Twitch first of all. Don't usually pull ones from Twitch, but this was one I thought to myself, I hadn't thought of that. So someone asking here, do you think there will be as big an emphasis on split raids in BFA with no tier bonuses? Which is a really interesting question. It is very possible that an awful lot of guilds therefore will not split raid in Battle for Azeroth unless there is some equal reason to do that, because the top guilds still will, because just getting more gear and higher item level gear gives you that small edge. But for the vast majority of guilds, like mythic guilds, the idea of split running just for a little bit higher item level generally is not worth the effort. And it's really all about getting those tier set bonuses really early on. Especially, I mean, Legion, this has been going on for a little while. It's sort of, you know, a much larger number of guilds were split raiding in Worlds of Draenor, and then that has sort of stepped up a little bit again. There are still guilds who do very, very well without split raiding, it has to be said. It's not a case that to get the tier finish in a reasonable amount of time, you have to split raid. It's one of those things, it gives you an advantage. But there are lots of other things that give you an advantage if it's a strength in your guild as well, and it's just the overall balance that determines how well you'll do. But this certainly does give you an advantage. And if it weren't for the tier set bonuses, would people do it as much? I don't think so, no. So, you're looking at a situation where probably you're not going to be doing split raids in as many guilds as has happened now, I think. Again, we'll have to wait to see if something else super important is going to drop from raids, but I don't think there will be. So, yeah. Okay, comment from Patreon here. Again, all related to the old tier before we get into the other comments this week. Says, looks like your no tier source was right. Kind of funny. Final Boss had their post BlizzCon show this week, and Bay and Preach both said tier was confirmed to be staying. Then Ian's interview came out a day later. Now, my thoughts on this is, obviously last week when I was talking about this, again, it was a friend of a friend who'd overheard it. That's not proof. But it did make a certain amount of sense. So although I wasn't totally, oh yes, this is definitely happening, it made a certain amount of sense. And the reason for that is, for example, you're talking about people there saying, oh, it's been confirmed that tier is going to be in Battle for Azeroth. Here's my issue. If it were confirmed that at BlizzCon, if they'd have actually said there's going to be tier in Battle for Azeroth, surely someone would have asked, so how are you going to change it to fit with Azerite armor? Because Azerite armor occupies what now are traditional tier slots. Now, of course, it's quite easy. You could just make the tier pieces different slots. But why wouldn't someone ask? I'm quite sure someone would have asked. So for me, had the ring of truth about it. Tier wouldn't really fit. And then when Ian Hazakostas, of course, when he, it was confirmed before then anyway, but when he was doing his Q&A really recently, and he talked about the fact that they're moving away from tier because of so many dead spots on your gear. With the Azerite's armor system, we're already going to have 4 dead spots as it is. We're going to have the neck, and we're going to have the 3 Azerite armor pieces. So to have tier on top of that, never mind getting rid of the legendaries, to have tier on top of that, again, means you're having loads and loads of dead space. And we didn't need Ian Hazakostas to say that Blizzard developers don't like that idea to know that it's an inherently bad situation to be in. So it all had the ring of truth about it. So I really don't know why. Although, it was interesting. I don't know why it was massively surprising people. And I really don't get, because obviously I wasn't at BlizzCon, so I wasn't listening to lots of little conversations that happened off camera that weren't being shown. I could only see it from the virtual ticket. But I really don't know where people were getting that it had been confirmed. Because I watched the same stuff and it wasn't. So again, I think that's just people. I don't know. Where did that come from? Can anyone help me out? Where did that come from? Okay, on to some YouTube comments. So, Hopefully this is the last one about tier. I actually can't remember which questions I picked out, but I think it is. It says there's a grave in the WoD garrison marked Raid tier, which of course Raid tier. Say the name of that puzzle, blah, blah, blah. Yes, we get it. Sounds like Raid tier. They had this planned for a while. No, I don't think so. That gravestone, it's just one of those silly little gravestone names, isn't it? Someone's made a pun. It's, you know, it's not even Warcraft that does this, is it? In so many games, it's untrue. Like role-playing games, it's quite common. You know, witty little, making a name into something else, like a little pun on gravestones, is a staple of role-playing games. This was put in, this wasn't even put in during WoD. This was put in during MOP, because it was, when I got into the WoD beta, which was very early on in WoD, it was there then. So, you know, this is something that's been there for years. You don't put something like that. If they'd have been planning to get rid of tier, they're not going to wait another 3 expansions before they do it. The only thing they're going to plan over many years would be the story arc, you know. So the storyline in Battle for Azeroth, yes, that would have been already known about back then. I mean, they've been building up to this time. I mean, the thing we're getting now in Argus, this Titan thing, is a culmination of stuff that we know has gone back years, because they laid the foundations for it in the game in Mists of Pandaria. So, storyline, yes, they will think very, very far ahead. Gameplay-wise, not so much, no. You know, it's quite reactive, and they'll think up towards the next expansion, of course, because they're developing one expansion at the same time as another. But that 3 expansions back, no. Next one, it says, just want to say I know a lot of heroic raiders that hate Titanforging. So what I was saying is that basically the hate for Titanforging comes from the Mythic raiding community, that heroic raiders normal, everyone else sort of actually quite likes it. So saying that a lot of heroic raiders hate Titanforging. In many ways it's worse for normal and heroic guilds. There will always be an upgrade in Mythic Plus because of Titanforging, even in lower level guilds. People treat like it's Mythic. And I get the... Sorry, I'm stopping there, but you can read the rest of it yourself. I get the sentiment. I would have thought in many ways it could be worse for heroic and normal players, because apart from anything, it's not even just about the fact that you are encouraged to do Mythic Plus more for gear. It's the fact that if someone gets really lucky in a heroic raid and gets a 955, that's a much bigger upgrade over the baseline stuff than if they did that in Mythic. So if you get a 955 item, you know, in Mythic, it's 25 item levels above baseline, which is still a lot. It's a massive amount. But it's even more for heroic, and even more still for normal. And guess what? Damn sight high for LFR. But of course, the chances are much, much lower as well, because it's not like an equal chance to Titanforge, and it just randomly rolls how much it Titanforges. The way Titanforging works internally in the game is you roll for you get the loot, and that's one table, roll table that you get. And then it rolls to see whether it's Warforged or Socket or not. And then it rolls to see if it's Titanforged. And if it does, it's one step up. It's one step of Titanforge. And then if it does Titanforge, it rolls again. And is it again? And it rolls again. So the chances of getting the really high Titanforge, it has to have successfully rolled on a table where the chances are already very low quite a lot of times. So you very rarely see them, and will much more rarely see them in Heroic than Mythic. But when you do, yeah, the disparity that it can cause, especially if it's a very nice piece like a relic or a trinket, particularly if it's your BIS trinket. But, and again, it can only be anecdotal, because I always say this, you know, no one really knows, because Blizzard don't actually send out. It'd be a simple thing, and I always say, I'm going to bore people again, in-game survey, do you like the Titanforging system? Yes or no? Simple, and they could get accurate results then. But anecdotally, we can only go by anecdotes. Whenever I talk about it, you know, the people in chat who are not, you know, cutting edge Mythic Raiders are saying that they quite like it, and that's just the feedback I'm getting. That's what the feedback Blizzard say they're getting, and I haven't really seen a groundswell of opinion to change that. I'm not saying like all Heroic Raiders like it. You don't like it. You know other Heroic Raiders that don't like it as well. But and as I say, I do get the sentiment. I think that Heroic Raiders should be even more annoyed by it than Mythic Raiders. But just the feedback I get seems not. Next one, is Titanforging good for the game? Now, this could be a topic of discussion for an entire video, but I don't think it's one I would do as a separate video, because at the end of the day, again, although, you know, it's debatable what proportion of heroic raiders and normal raiders and Mythic Plus Dungeoneers and and PvPers and other groups, communities within the game have about titanforging, you can certainly argue it's split. In Mythic raiding circles, it's not split at all. Mythic raiders, progress raiders, like the ones who are going to get cutting edge, don't like it. They do not like it. The very top guilds don't like it. The ones who will only just scrape cutting edge will not like it either. You know, by and large, people in that camp don't really like it. So obviously I would be biased. I would come down on the side very clearly of, is it good for the game? No. Because how I see Titanforge is this. Blizzard, and they've been doing this expansion after expansion after expansion. What can we do to extend the life of a raid tier? Okay, so people will progress. They'll get to a certain point and then it'll finish. Mythic Raiders, you could argue they don't have to do as much. Maybe that's why Mythic Raiders hate it more, because it doesn't do anything for us, really, other than give us a load of extra work to do. Because the raid tier for most Mythic Raiders is going to last a sizable amount of time. I mean, you've done pretty well if you've got 4 or 5 weeks. You've killed it with 4 or 5 weeks to go before the next tier. That's pretty good going. Heroic Raiders, though, there's quite a lot of heroic raiding. I mean, obviously some heroic raiding guilds will progress through heroic and then move on to mythic. Many can't or don't want to. So their progress sort of ends at heroic, and that is likely to finish at most halfway through the tier. So there's a lot more dead time between tiers. So it's really for those to help gear up, really. It's a way of sort of saying there is a reason to continually farm it week after week after week, because you might get a really big upgrade. So that's what it's in there for. So, but is that good for the game? Is very, very debatable. I mean, I would argue no, it's just there. I think Blizzard's bottom line with it is they don't want people unsubscribing for a month or 2 months, worse still, while they wait for new content. I think it's there to keep people going and going and going. That's my opinion. Next one, it says, don't forget that the Azerite armor cannot Titanforge, which is true. They did say that. Which means Mythic Raiding will give the best pieces unless they change the Mythic Plus item level cap to Mythic Raiding. Will it, though? It will give the best item level pieces, but, and this is something that, again, we might imagine. I mean, I'm not going to believe anyone who says, oh, yeah, this was confirmed either. After the tier thing, anyone says to me, oh, such and such was confirmed at BlizzCon. If I didn't hear it myself, I'm not believing you. Sorry. But what effect will that have? That the mythic stuff will be higher item level than the other stuff. Is that just going to affect its stats? In which case, who cares? The fact that it can't Titanforge means it's likely to be amongst your lowest item level pieces, because you can't Warforge, can't get sockets. So, you know, I'm not saying everything else will have Warforge with sockets, but, you know, you have a decent chance on most other pieces. To say nothing of Titanforge. So, what I would want to know is if it's truly going to be a proper replacement for tier, where, as Ian Hazakostas himself said, the mythic or the raiders will get the best gear and mythic raiders will get the best still. And remember, these Azerite armor pieces aren't really from the way it works. It's not supposed to even be from raiding, is it? But let's say, you know, you were getting them and you got the highest item level pieces from it. It's not enough for it to just be the stats. It would have to affect the strength of the Netherlight Crucible type things that you put on them. And I'm not sure that's the case. So, again, Ian Hazakostas does say that raiders will get the best stuff. They will be rewarded for it, which obviously then has to assume that Mythic Raiders more than Heroic, more than normal. But they haven't said how yet, to my mind. They haven't said how. Next one says, prepare for Blizzard selling cosmetic sets via the store or worse, loot box RNG. So I don't want to believe this is where we're heading, but the whole system suits such a model. I don't really know that that's the case. What we're talking about here, by the way, is Blizzard's discussion of artwork, because the very sensible question was asked. So if there's no tier, what about tier art, tier armor sets? There's transmog, and Ian Hazakostas was saying, well, you know, that was the difficulty. Coming up with themed tier for every class didn't really work. So they're going to have themed sets, plates, mail, leather, cloth. And if it doesn't really suit your class, well, that's just because that theme of wherever you've got it from doesn't really tie in with your class much. You can take it if you want it, or you don't have to. Setting up for cosmetic thing. I don't think it does set up for cosmetic sets on the store, because they've done this before. There are things you can get on the store, cosmetic. There's 3 cosmetic hats you can get on the store. They did those years ago, and they haven't added to that library, which I've thought are a little bit baffling. Maybe they don't sell very well. But the other thing I would say is, would I mind? I wouldn't mind. I know I wouldn't mind. That's a silly question to ask. The question should be, would people in general mind? Because it's cosmetic. I think people understand that Blizzard need to make money. They have to, they have to respond to their shareholders. Their shareholders want money. They don't care about the game. They don't care about our experience. They don't care about the quality of the game, the integrity of the game. They don't care about any of that. So we all need to come to an accord. It needs to make a lot of money. We don't want to have to pay for things that were needed to be able to play the game, because I think we can all agree that's bad. So what we need is more cosmetic options. So I have no problem at all with more cosmetic options. I would far rather they massively expanded the cosmetic options on the online store than, for example, charged a fortune for character transfers, which is especially poignant to me at the moment because I'm about to have to make some. Because I'm looking for a guild at the moment, and if I have to change to Horde, which is almost certain, I've been looking through the guilds already, I know I'm going to have to go Horde again. God. That's going to cost a fortune. Even if I only transfer a few characters, and I like my alts, I'm not just going to transfer a few characters. That's going to cost an absolute bomb. But, and that's the way it is. I would far rather that Blizzard were making that money instead from cosmetic stuff that plenty of people would still buy, but no one has to. So if you don't agree with it, or you don't want it, you can do without it. No one needs the cosmetic stuff. There's plenty of cosmetic stuff to hunt for in the game anyway, without having to pay a bean for it. So I'd be totally fine with it, but I also disagree that we're starting on a path to it, because although they might do it at some point in the future, and I sort of hope they will, again, just because it averts the need to put lots of things in game to make money that we need. Like, for example, if Blizzard didn't care whether people unsubscribe for a few months and then started up again, then we might stop getting all this grindy stuff to have to do that especially really came in Legion with the AP grind and the legendary farming and all the rest of it. Cut that out. Cut it. I mean, obviously they'll cut the legendary stuff out, but will Azeroth be just as much or worse a grind as AP? Time will tell on that one. So yeah, I'd far rather they sought cosmetic ways to make their money, which would appeal to people. Says next one, are you ever going to do Archives of Warcraft but for raids? Yes, I am. I mean, my first Archives of Warcraft series was very much about vanilla dungeons. I did those when the channel was still relatively new. And I also at the time, it would be good to do it for the raids, but it would take a hell of a long time. And it would, I was doing those every week. This would be, need more than a week. And some of the vanilla raids, let's face it, aren't there anymore. They're just not there anymore. But that's, I've decided, is not a barrier. So I am going to be doing that. I'm going to be starting them next month, Christmas time. The problem with them is it will take a certain amount of time. It'll take like a good month to do them, so they can only come out once a month. It's the sort of thing that will go on Patreon first, the way I see it, and then, on YouTube like a month later. But I am going to be starting that. I'm going to be starting on UBRS as well, because that's like, people associate First Raid with like Nixie's Lair or Molten Core, but in actual fact, UBRS. And I mean, you could raid dungeons for a start, so it wouldn't necessarily even be that UBRS was your first raiding experience, but of a proper actual raid instance. So I'll be doing that one first. Obviously, that doesn't exist, but pointing out the aspects of it as it was at the time. But yeah, that is something that's going to take a while. I need to, and I'm really busy at work, so that's going to have to wait until I finish in a few weeks' time. I'll try and get that done over Christmas, get that onto Patreon, then it'll, as I say, it'll be staggered a month at a time. I'll have to do it. It's either now or never, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, if vanilla servers are coming and we don't know when they're coming, then, now is the time to do them. Next one, this is about the old Horde and Alliance racials. So, in some ways, Horde is better at raiding. Only 25 out of 100 guilds in the top 100 on WoW Progress or Alliance. Obviously, this doesn't apply to all realms and guilds. No, I mean, there are some a smaller number of realms that are largely alliance, a much smaller number. And if you go down, you do find sometimes more of alliance. I mean, you get to some pages on My Progress, and it's actually more alliance. But then you go a few more pages, it's back to Horde again. So it is still largely Horde. In terms of whether they're better at raiding, that's a moot point to a certain extent. You could argue you get maybe, and I only say maybe, a tiny benefit for the very top guilds. Because you notice Scrub Busters do very well. They're very competitive at the top end. And they're alliance. So it's not a clear-cut advantage. But I think that perception's there. And also, I think it's gone beyond perception now. I mean, I was saying I'm looking for a guild. I know I'm going to have to go Horde because there's just so few alliance guilds. And there's just that perception that there's so many Horde guilds. So even people that aren't that bothered, or guilds that aren't that bothered, because there used to be, people just go, well, I'll go Horde anyway, because if I have to change guilds, I'm more, you know, it's less of a cost, and might as well just do it all in one go. And that's the other thing as well, of course, because there's so many Horde players now, transferring to another realm is a lot cheaper to transfer to the same faction than it is the opposite faction. And that causes a problem as well. I think part of that is Blizzard's fault for creating that huge disparity in the cost for a transfer. You know, maybe they should, if you're going to transfer so many characters at once, maybe offer a discount or something like that. But at least they shouldn't really charge as much as they do. But again, I'm biased at the moment because I'm about to have to pay that. Or I hope I am anyway. Got to find a guild yet. Next one, last couple. So, it says, I wonder how the helm, chest and shoulders, these are the Azerite armor pieces, will work as far as Mythic Plus drops. They said it won't Titan Forge, but it will scale with your Mythic Plus level. I don't know on that one, really. For my mind, we don't really know the nuts and bolts of how anything's working. Quite a lot of the things Blizzard don't know themselves because they need to wait for beta to see how the feedback is and to see how things are actually going to work in practice. But even some of the things they might know, again, we didn't really get a lot of detail. We got, like you'd expect at these things, a lot of aspirational talk, how it's intended to work, the sort of things that they're doing it for, and there weren't enough questions on how it's going to work in detail. So we'll just have to wait for beta, I think, on that one. And then the next one, it says, the Alliance Horde confrontation will be blah, blah, blah. 8 and 8.1, but then 8.2 to 8. Whatever will be all Old God related. Maybe. I'd be very surprised if Old Gods wasn't in it at all, I have to say. I would be very surprised if Old Gods weren't in it at all. But, and Zoth in particular. But it might not. It does seem strange to me, though, that they did all this Void storyline, and they're going to be having the Void Elves as... you know, playable race, albeit for one faction, and then not really go anywhere with that story just now. But sometimes they have, it's not like they have never done this before. You know, sort of started off a storyline and then not come back to it for a couple of expansions. But it would be very, very strange, because it was out of the place, this Void story with Illyria on Argus. It wasn't at all tied to anything in Legion. And... it would be very, very surprising were it not a major theme at some point in the next expansion. But yeah, time will just have to tell with that one. And then the last one, it says, the battle for Azeroth will be the final battle between mortals and gods. No, that's like saying it's wrapping up World of Warcraft altogether. No, World of Warcraft is going for some time. You can see it. You can see it in their eyes. This is going for some time. If anything, I think Battle for Azeroth is the reverse. I think it's stepping it down. Like we've had, they do this sometimes. You get something that's super epic and it looks like, you know, we are battling major forces here, major cosmic forces, and then they rain it down a little bit, and then back up, and then down, and then back up and down. So Legion, of course, we were fighting against these major cosmic forces, the Burning Legion. The next one, I think they just want to rein it back a bit. I think they want to rein it back. And I think they want it just to be back to Horde versus Alliance. And, you know, I think that's what that's about. Last question. It says, Horde finds out that Old Gods are corrupting Teldrassil, then burn it down. Alliance see it as Horde starting a war and battle for Azeroth. It's a lovely thought, isn't it? I don't think it's true. I don't know. I think this is demonstrably untrue. I think what this is Horde players, and it's understandable, thinking that, just like with Legion, where the antagonism between Horde and Alliance was caused by a misunderstanding of the events of the Broken Shore, I think people are looking for the same sort of thing here, a misunderstanding. And that would be better writing. That's what I hope myself, especially, as I say, if I have to go Horde. I don't really want to feel I'm on the side of the bad guys. And this is the thing, like, the Horde versus Alliance, Orcs versus Humans, Warcraft 1, you could see it from both sides, because obviously the Orc Horde came through the Dark Portal, their world is dead. All right, it was sort of their fault. But they, you know, they're just carving themselves out a new place to live, and that puts them in conflict with the current residents. Sure. But now we're in a situation where, although the Alliance and the Horde are not exactly at peace, they're not at all-out war either. But we know from the introduction to the novel that is based on the events immediately after Argus, which is coming out next June, that we know from that it was a script that was given out to people that physically went to BlizzCon. Wowhead, of course, threw it onto the internet straight away. Sylvanas is actively starting war. We know this. We know now. It seemed a little bit strange because in that synopsis she was talking about attacking Stormwind. So we still don't know for certain what I was going to say spark them, but that's just really on the nail analogy to use. But what is actually going to cause the burning of Teldrassil? But what we do know is that Sylvanas is actively seeking all-out war with the Alliance. That sort of makes the Hordes the bad guys in this, because they're the ones who are starting it for no reason, as far as we can tell at the moment, for no reason other than Sylvanas has got it into her head, which again we know for a fact, she's got it into her head that there can be no peace with the Alliance and the Horde. So she's just going, do you know what? Force the situation, wipe out the Alliance. Horde will just run Azeroth happily ever after. That just places them as the bad guys. So I can understand Horde players wanting to see that in actual fact it'll all be sparked by some misunderstanding again, or, you know, some unfortunate event. But that's not the way it's shaping out with what we know so far. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. And that's the last question. So thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to like. Put a comment down below on any of the questions you want to if you haven't already. Don't forget to subscribe if this is your first time here. And until next time, I'll see you later.